got my top designers banging away on a script right now. As soon as it's ready, we'll send it right over.
Script?
As a child, I had a profound love for comic books, and I used to go to the bookstore and just dig through the shelves looking for something that just screamed out, grab me, tug me close, hold me close to your heart, and that was Deadpool for me, the merc with the mouth. Even his story on how he was created is equally as interesting as the character in and of itself. You see, the creator of Deadpool was working for DC when he created the character Deathstroke, and he thought that it would be so cool if they took Deathstroke and made him from a villain into a hero, and DC said to pound sand up his urethra because we don't make villains heroes here. And he's like, fine, I quit. And he went to a place that would make a villain a hero. As they had done with the Punisher in the past, he went to Marvel, and he brought the craziest goofy guy, a guy who's willing to stretch out boxes to hide his junk on screen. That's right, Deadpool. And he not only did he take the idea of Slade Wilson, but he turned it up to 11, taking some of Wolverine's aspects, giving him a healing factor, making him absolutely batshit insane, and constantly dying from cancer at the same time, willing to break the fourth wall at any moment. Deadpool always had his own brand of aggression and goofiness. Take, for example, this first scene in the game when you are brought the script for the game you're about to be playing. Of course it's going to be a half-naked woman at your front door holding a giant box. Deadpool's going to point a gun at her. It's going to be over the top. It's going to be insane. And that's what I love about the character. And as Deadpool reads the script for the game, it then goes to a cutout where he's walking in front of it and making his own creative changes because he doesn't mess with scripts. He is better than them. He is Deadpool. He's going to go off the goddamn rails. That's his thing. And right away you can tell the love and appreciation for the IP once you set in this game. Right away you can tell that they did their research and they understood the character. And right away when you do get into the combat tutorial, you're clearing out this room of guys. It seems pretty by the numbers. You're in a little sewer area, but what you end up doing after this is another thing that shows that the creators of this game had an understanding of who Deadpool was. It's such a great capacity because you start like inflating this inflatable thing, which will become important later. And that's kind of why I'm going to take a step back and go a little bit more into Deadpool's lore right here, but I just wanted to highlight how important and cool this little section was. Now, Deadpool has always had kind of a vast appeal to comic book fans, because up until that point and to this very day, there's really not a character that embodies chaos and goofiness, and also is somebody you can just cut back and read and have a good time with as much as Deadpool. He really truly is a character in and of himself, even though he started as a knockoff of another character. And on top of that, it kind of sucked up until this point when this game had come out that there really wasn't a Deadpool show. There wasn't. He popped up in a couple animated series. They kind of made him feel like the more one-dimensional angry guy, and then when he was done right, you just got just a taste of how cool he was. You never really got the full embodiment of who Deadpool was. And why they decided to do this game, I'll never know. I mean, I understand that Activision at the time was kind of pushing out any Marvel IP they could get their hands on because they had all the rights to Marvel at the time, hence why they were making all the Spider-Man games, all the X-Men games, but Deadpool kind of came a little bit out of left field. I mean, even if you take the fact that X-Men Origins Wolverine was an incredibly successful game, and the movie had recently come out, like close enough to where a Deadpool game kind of made sense, it's still kind of cool that they didn't just rip off the X-Men Origins Wolverine with a terrible example of Deadpool and actually made their own Deadpool. You can tell there's research and love in every single aspect of this game. You can tell that they read a bunch of comic books, got a lot of previous knowledge, and wanted to give this game true justice to the character, and I can't be more happy to see that. I'm so sick of, in the modern time, these studios taking an IP that is like held dear to people and being like, well, we just really want the character and the clout behind the character, and then we're going to do whatever the fuck we want, and you can pound sand up your asshole. That's kind of what these games like to do and like to shove down your throat, and it's kind of annoying to me because it's like you could make new characters, you could do something, but you don't want to do that. You want to just live off of the clout clout of these other characters and then write whatever slop that fits your bullshit life meter on the other side of that writing table. And I hate that. It's like, take these characters, do the character the best justice you possibly can do, and you still can create something really artistic and interesting, maybe have some deeper messages in there, but not make the game a vehicle to deliver your message or deliver your own personal bullshit. Now, I know that's a lot of shit that I'm saying, and you're like, well, what game does that? And I think Spider-Man does that a lot. The modern PlayStation Spider-Man games, I feel like it doesn't have enough care and actual emphasis on the characters themselves. You look at Miles Morales compared to the Miles Morales movies, where Into the Spider-Verse is this great, fantastic, deep character with a lot of fun to be had, and every time one of those movies come out, I'm excited to see it. And then I look at the game where it's fucking Steve Urkel in tights, not about it. You can tell that they didn't really care about the characters. They're like, oh, we're just gonna do whatever the hell we want, and you idiots are gonna slop it down your gullet. And I do appreciate that when I play Deadpool, right away you feel the care behind the character. That is so important to emphasize. Deadpool comes into the game, pulls out all of his giggity schmoodle, and plasters it all over the walls. It's fantastic. It's wonderful, and I love that each second is so perfectly made for the character. And I just think the studio behind this, High Noon, consistently knew what they were doing with making video games. You can look back at Dark Watch, the best vampire FPS game ever made, and then they go from that to making some of the best Transformers games ever made. I mean, Hasbro keeps constantly telling Activision and Microsoft to, hey, bring back those Transformers games. We need them back. They were the best Transformers games we ever got. And it's this love behind the characters, like right here, where I emphasized earlier this blow-up toy. The fact that you end the first mission by jumping off the building and landing onto this blow-up toy shows that Deadpool isn't just a goofy, chaotic mess that he is. He's also actually pretty clever, and he's able to, like, set things up in motion previously, which shows that he isn't just some idiot who's running his mouth, which is how he's portrayed a lot in media. And don't get me wrong, I think the Ryan Reynolds movies are fantastic, and I think there is a lot of love to the character, but when you see him in other Marvel shit, it's always like he's the chaos guy that just kind of pops up and is annoying, when he actually has some pre-thought out stuff going on. And on top of that, only to emphasize the fact that he is kind of intelligent and preemptively setting these things up, but then to show emphasis on the fact that this is a video game and Deadpool knows it's a video game, and he goes way over budget, and the game then becomes this silly, almost Zelda meets Mario inspired game because Deadpool doesn't have the budget to have an actual game. And not only did they just put this in, it wasn't gimmicky, it actually plays pretty decently. And that's something that when you're going to put something in a game and it's going to be a gimmick, you have to put it in well. You have to make sure that it plays well, that it's fun, that not only is it a very intriguing aspect of the game, but it is also a fun, memorable section. And that is exactly what this was. This is something that when I started playing it, I'm like, this is cool. I hope it doesn't go on too long. I hope it plays really decent, because a lot of games will shit the bed here. One example would be Jade Empire, where it found a gimmick early on and it was like, oh, this is cool. You then get to do some air battles. And for the rest of the game, it just kind of feels like it was shoved into the game without a lot of love put in it. And there was only 2 times where that actually felt like it was meaningful to the story. This section right here played well and felt meaningful for the story and was never used again, which I think is the perfect way to utilize this, because of the fact that it was used for the joke. It hit the punchline. We do not have to revisit that again. And the fact that the devs took time out of their work schedule, went and built a whole new style of gameplay in a little section just for a single joke is fantastic. It even has like goofy, weird enemies you can kill here at the end. All these floating things, they could have just made it where your sword swings through them and nothing happens. But no, they went through and they actually edited in all the sprites and the effects of them dying, which I thought was an incredibly nice touch. And early on in this game, I actually went into this game with the idea that it wasn't going to play too great, because one of the gripes I saw online was it had a fantastic story, but kind of mid-gameplay, and I do not understand that when this gameplay gives you so much freedom. Sure, you can go through this game just using the katana, the hammers, or the scythes, playing this game as if it was a typical God of War hack and slash, but that's not what this game is, and I hate that this game gets thrown into the God of War clone like trash bin. It's always been something that's irritated me with this time frame, because it seemed like every FPS game that came out was just a Halo killer, and every hack and slash game that wasn't Devil May Cry was a goddamn God of War clone, and that's not what these games were. They were doing their own thing, but they were utilizing a combat that was fresh and popular. And it's funny that you can look at a game like Spider-Man PS4, which I've already kind of highlighted how I don't like it because of how they did the characters, but you can look at Spider-Man PS4, which has high critical love all over the place. It's like those critics played the first 10 seconds of the game and just jizzed out their goddamn boobies to show that they love that game so much, when it is just kind of Arkham Knight in the daytime. And yet you do not see critics going out there and calling it an Arkham Knight clone, and then disingenuously shoving it off to the side like they love to do with these games in this time period. And it sucks that this is put into that God of War trash bin, when in fact this game plays like a panel straight out of a Deadpool comic book with the quippy one-liners. Even this boss fight, he's talking about how the game couldn't afford A-list celebrities, so he's stuck with old B-cups over here. And yeah, he says stuff like B-cups because he's making jokes about her boobs. That is very, very Deadpool. That is Deadpool all over the place. And even when this boss fight boils down and you fall into this deep pit, you're then greeted with a cutscene that is the perfect embodiment of what Deadpool is in the comics. He makes a joke about touching her boobs, and then it pulls out, the camera decides, hey, we're going to pan out a little bit, and you see that he has a rod sticking through him, which then starts a quick time event where you have to pull yourself off of the rebar. What's more Deadpool than that? What's more gameplay mechanic oriented than that? And that's where the God of War mechanics come in so perfectly in this game, because of the fact that Deadpool is kind of a hack and slashy character and a third person shooter at the same time, so to bounce between those two worlds so seamlessly and then have the utilization of quick time events for gruesome stuff like this is insanely perfect. I don't understand how anybody could just boil this game down to a rip-off of another game. I mean, even the enemy variety is pretty decent, especially for this time frame. If you haven't played a lot of games from this era, the enemy variety at this time was kind of atrocious. Didn't matter what game you were playing. Even my favorite game, one of my favorite games of all time, Halo 2 and Halo 1, you look at their enemy variety and it's probably the same amount of enemy designs as in this game. I also like that they made Mr. Sinister the big bad of this game, because I feel like he's an incredibly underutilized villain in the Marvel Universe. Shout out X-Men 97, because that shit slapped all sorts of clit in the fact that you go from Sinister being one of the big bads in the first season of that to then playing as him as Deadpool. It just is so amazing to have these two things that I was incredibly nostalgic for work so seamlessly in a game that just feels like it was perfectly made for me. It has the juvenile humor I love. It has the characters I love, and it does them justice, but in a way that I feel like works for both characters individually. Especially when you see how Deadpool goes into this so cocky, and he thinks he's just going to end the whole game right here, and he gets blown into pieces, and this is utilized as a time to bring more characters in from the Deadpool universe, and more to the X-Men universe. But when they're in a Deadpool context, I almost want to put it in a Deadpool universe type of vibe, because of the fact how they act a little differently in the canon itself than how they would act in an X-Men comic. Another interesting thing that this game does is it utilizes different styles of cutscenes and different styles of things that they can do. Like, take for example that little Deadpool slideshow we got earlier. You can see one of those slideshows for every single character to get a background if you want to, and then when he does do some little lore drops, it never feels like it's impeding on the game too much, or it's bearing you down with too much information. It feels like it's giving you just enough information to where you can be in the same frame of mind that somebody who is a fan of the comics is in, and if you need a little more, it does give you the option to get a deep dive on these characters. And a funny thing throughout this game, Deadpool will even make comments about characters in different iteration of comics, because he has that ability to break the fourth wall. So when he makes a mistake, he'll acknowledge how the audience will probably be complaining because it's not lore accurate enough, and then he'll fucking lore drop on your ass, and it'll just be a small tidbit out of nowhere, and it'll fit so perfectly without pulling you out of the gameplay experience in and of itself, because that is a problem I have with modern games, where it really takes the controller out of your hands so you can watch a 15-minute cutscene because the devs want you to be told exactly what to do. This game feels like you're experiencing the story and not being told it. And the fact that you can sit and slap a Wolverine on the ground for like 30 minutes is fantastic, because it really highlights Deadpool and Wolverine's dynamic, which I'm hoping by the time this video comes out, the movie will already be out and it'll be awesome, and everybody will just flock to this and love them even more, because if there's something I love is when there's a good tie-in to a character that makes more people love the character and really dive into them. Because honestly, I hate gatekeeping. It's not something I like. I might not enjoy something, but if you can find a love for that character from that, I mean, even the Halo show. Let's say you've never played Halo and you go and watch the Halo TV show and you're like, I want to go play Halo, and you find out how much better the games are than the movie. That to me is just a showing that, hey, we can use other medias to pull people into something I love, and maybe they'll find appreciation for the same thing that I appreciate. So this game, I thought, really highlighted that perfect Deadpool-Wolverine dynamic, as well as pulling in other characters like Cable, who in Deadpool 2 I didn't think was utilized as well as he was utilized in Cable and Deadpool, but in this game he is utilized perfectly. And I love the fact that maybe you can watch Deadpool 2, dive into the comics, and then maybe play this game and get this full dynamic and full experience of everything that embodies these two characters. It's amazing. I mean, this was one of my favorite cutscenes ever put into a game. Throughout the cutscene, you're just kind of listening to Cable drawn on and on and on about what Sinister's doing and how the fate of the universe is going so bad. And at a certain point, you will have the option to go down the old sewer slide because you're so annoyed, putting the gat to your brains and pulling the trigger away, waking up with a note on your chest saying, hey, if you go to this place, there is a big breasted naked fangirl lady waiting for you, so you need to complete this task. And the voices inside your head, which are the comic book panels talking to you in real time, are telling you, you know, it's probably another trap. But what if it isn't? What if there is that big breasted lady waiting for you on the other side? And that is the true mentality of Deadpool, because he doesn't really care about saving the world. He just cares about women with big breasts and how he can fondle them, while at the same time causing as much mayhem and destruction as he possibly can. And that's why I love his character. And it is funny how you do get like this moment where he thinks he actually got the double D breasted lady waiting for him, and as he starts to fondle him, it then pans out and it's Cable. And it's just the comic timing in this game, even some of the stuff that comes off as kind of dated and cringe, I still think that this game has a net positive in humor throughout the whole thing. It does try a lot of different jokes, and I think some rise and some fall, but on the ones that rise, there's just such a high point throughout this game with so many good jokes that the ones that kind of hit us, they don't ever feel like they're like forced humor. It feels genuine, and how Deadpool would be kind of a cringy guy in reality. And one big emphasis on the humor that I want to point out is if you look at games like Immortals of Avion, for example, where it's just like these stupid quips like, oh, he's pretty evil, he puts the E in evil, and a lot of like, oh, is he right behind me? You're telling me I can do that with my hands? And it never comes off as funny, it never comes off as clever. It just feels like that like shitty fucking weird, oh, I'm gonna say something because I have nothing else to say kind of humor, and it doesn't feel good. It's never humorous, it's never fun. This game actually has humor. That's the difference. And it's so hard for me to explain why I hate modern writing so much until I want to just have you sit down, play Deadpool, like experience some of the jokes that really hit, and then go play something like Immortals of Avion that's just saying shit every 3 seconds that doesn't really feel like it needs to be there. I think another thing that really helps push this humor too is all the characters feel pretty in-depth, and they feel like they have their own personalities and own motives throughout this game. Like Cable, he feels like he's not there. He's not just some one-dimensional character that just shows up to progress the story. He actually feels like somebody who is forced to be there and has to deal with Deadpool because he knows that by making Deadpool accomplish these tasks, it will further the greater good, so he just has to put up with them. And same with Wolverine. They both feel like they're these vehicles throughout this story that are their characters in their own right, but also are there just to push the story forward. When you play a game with modern writing, it just kind of feels like you're dealing with a bunch of one-dimensional characters that you can say stupid one-liners to and then move on, and you never feel like any of them are actually memorable. In this game, if even the villain has deep character. This little example right here where you're killing a Mr. Sinister clone, and it's just a DJ booth and you're shocking him. It is something so out of left field and feels so out of place in any other game, but because this game has set a standard up until this point, it works absolutely perfectly, and the humor lands. At least for me, it landed. It was one of the greatest examples of a character being perfectly done in a video game I had ever seen. And it's just like the interactions, you want to keep living in these interactions, but they don't ever outstay their welcome, which is perfect. Even though you want more, you know that if it would have gone a little further, it probably would have ruined the momentum it had. And the fact that the developers of this game understood that line so well is something that pisses me off when I think about how this game is kind of shoved to the side, where it's like, oh, it's just a God of War clone, so the combat's not that good. When this combat's so amazing and free that it lets you just kind of experience with whatever you want with it, which it just bothers me how I can look at topics about this game and how people will talk about it, how it's just kind of a mid-gameplay experience, when it's fucking amazing. I mean, it has these little puzzles where you will then start utilizing a sentinel arm to whether you want to just progress to another area by using it as a platform, or later in the level, then utilizing it as a cannon to clear enemy and debris out of your way. So it's almost an on-rails section, but it doesn't feel like your typical on-rails section because it has so much emphasis on world building and destruction of the environments that you feel like you're actually doing something. You feel like you're a part of this world making real change. It doesn't just feel like, oh, well, we haven't had an on-rails section, so how do we put that in the game? Everything feels so intentionally placed in this game, and it's so amazing. And another thing that I want to highlight about how this game looks, if you play a lot of games from this era, you have this yellow filter over top of it. I don't know what that was all about. Even Halo 3 had it. You look at X-Men Origins, Wolverine, they all had the piss filter. Not that I minded that. I actually think that I have a nostalgic vibe for the way games looked in this era, but I do love that how this game was like, Deadpool is a bright character, we need to make this game bright. And they went out of their way to do that when everything, they could have just made it look like every other hack and slash game of the time with a slightly yellow filter, and then just been like, oh, well, we'll add a red hue to it so that it's Deadpool. The fact that they actually worked hard to make Deadpool pop against what would have been kind of a very yellow tinted game of this time, they said, no, we're not doing that, we're taking it a step further. And that's something that should be appreciated, because people will look back at a time at a game and they'll be like, why does it have this, or why does it have that? And it's like, well, that was just a thing of the time. And this game, you can look back on it today and see that it stands out from the crowd. It truly took itself and moved itself away from what everybody else was doing and said, we are here, you need to pay attention to us. And as I mentioned with the ARM as kind of an on-rails segment, they actually do have an on-rails segment in this game. And I think it is one of the most fun on-rails sections I have ever played in a game. You're using Cable's gun that is attached to a sentinel foot, and that sentinel foot would then launch you in the air. You'll get a funny cutscene, whether it's Deadpool falling or whatever, and it'll move you to different environments where you cause havoc in them. And out of everything, I think maybe this kind of outstayed its welcome by like a slight margin. Not like I'm saying, oh, I wish it was like half the distance. I think it did work incredibly well. It was just sort of, some of the areas kind of felt like they might have lasted just a second too long, which is such a hard dynamic to say. That's like, oh, maybe they could have cut one of the areas and missed one of the jokes. But at the same time, I felt like I would have almost been sad if they would have cut it, because I wouldn't have got that little silly joke between the few areas. Take, for example, the last jump I just made in the boot. I went from one area in the same area to then jumping on top of the building and crushing a bunch of soldiers literally under my boot. It is a great joke. It is perfectly timed. But then I have like another section, and that section almost felt a little unnecessary. Then to go into this jump, which I think is the best out of all the cutscenes, not only do you have the sex doll there, which is just perfect, and then a real lady, you won't know it's all in Deadpool's mind at the end of the day, and he's an insane person, to the last section, which you're hanging upside down clearing enemies, while you and Rogue are falling from the ceiling, and you're getting some cool little Rogue tidbits, where he's talking, well, can't you just fly? And in the modern interpretation of X-Men, Rogue can't fly, she just can steal powers, which he then highlights in the actual game, which I think is very poignant and interesting that they put that in. And you then get another section where it is gimmicky, yes, because your head's on backwards and the controllers are all sorts of messed up because everything's backwards. You get great moments like this, and they don't usually outstay their welcome. The foot thing had one little section that outstayed, but for the most part, everything feels so fresh and new. And when you get gimmicky stuff like this, it is something that breaks up the normal gameplay and really puts you in this perspective of like, all right, let me get back to killing some soldiers. And then when you kill some soldiers for a while, you get some fun little cutscenes where like Deadpool's peeing between two guys, and he then like says, hey, you guys got small wieners. Hey, look how weeny and small your peepees are. Ah, that sucks. And then he murders them at the urinals. It's great. It's clever. And when you do get back to the regular combat, you feel like you're ready to begin that journey. You're ready to go destroy things. And it's just perfectly timed. And like I thought right there where you just saw the weird T-posing guys, I thought I was going to go through another little section like I did earlier, and it's like, oh, that sucks. They did reuse something. And he then just says, nope, not walking down that door. We've already done this. I'm just going to call him and say, what the fuck, dude? You need to fix my game. And it goes back to a normally like designed room. There's also a great introduction to a new enemy type that can actually alter your mind state. And instead of just doing the weird filter like it did with the chick that can make you woozy as it did early in the game, this one actually just puts you in a room fully made of sexy women when you go around and talk to them. And this might seem like, oh, typical influencing guy's mind with a bunch of sexy women, but the layering in this where some of the women won't want anything to do with you adds a sense of reality. And then you'll sit down and tell people how you're Deadpool, and they'll be like, I don't even know who that is, I don't care, and walk away. It makes this interesting dynamic and adds layering to the actual humor in this game, to the storytelling in this game, and it's something I appreciated, because they could have just had where you walk up to one group of women, said, or not been able to walk up to any group of women, which a lot of games would have done, and it would have been like, oh, none of them existed. But the fact that you can have these individual conversations and then jump into a dynamic where you're fighting the enemy, I thought was really clever. And the puzzle solving, though not vast in this game, I thought worked well enough for its comedic purposes. Like here you hit some switches, you turn on the electricity, then you get to watch Deadpool zap and dance, and he then thinks he's pretty accomplished in his act, which cuts to the entire cast and crew watching him, which is just so goddamn perfect. I know I keep emphasizing how perfect this game is, and keep just kind of reiterating the same thing of how the jokes are well timed and how everything seems to flow so perfectly, but I think it's something that needs to be emphasized. I think it's something that somebody needs to grab you by the dick, slap the tip a few times, and say, listen, this is perfection. You need to understand how well we crafted this game. Oh, how are we supposed to get across the toxic river? Well, let's talk to our thought boxes about it. And then, oh, let's create an actual bridge of bubbles to go across this little area. And the fun thing is, you don't have to use these bubbles at all. Yes, it's way easier to use these bubbles to run across the sewer area, but you don't have to use them. You can literally just go and use these little floating platforms that are on the sewer area itself to slowly make your way across. And then the little shoo-ins of other game ideas thrown into this, which I've kind of emphasized with the little Mario thing, but you run into a chest, you jump into it, rattle around like you're in a JRPG, and it even does like this anime overlay, and then it starts doing this weird JRPG text where he then says that he really doesn't like JRPGs and they suck, which is super giga-based. I hate turn-based games, sorry. I know a lot of my fans out there are like, you should play some more old JRPGs. And turn-based games are fun. I don't care about that. I don't want to play them. I don't like them. And on top of that, this game also has some different avenues that you can go in that, again, separates it from being just thrown into that goddamn God of War clone bin. And it has a light stealth mechanic. And the way you know that the stealth is there is the game will put Deadpool in this super sneaky walking area. There's only one area where you can fail from not using stealth, so it's not like a hard mechanic that you focus on too much. It is just kind of refreshing that they varied the gameplay enough to add it in sometimes. And if you're good enough with stealth, there is sometimes you can do a whole area with stealth. I'm terrible at stealth, so for the most part I got to kill one enemy and then I was back to regular hack and slash combat. But it is interesting how they do this, and the fact that they keep moving through the game. Like right here, I sneak up on Mr. Sinister, I stab him in the throat, and I decide, hey, I'm Deadpool. I finally beat the game. I am the ultimate Giga Chad. You suck. I'm shoving a sword up your ass because I am the ultimate king of killing shit. Time to post it on my goddamn MySpace. And that's our twort. It's Twitter. It's our twort. And yeah, everybody's like, oh my god, Deadpool, you're so good. This is great. Except for Cable, who's like, you fucked up. That's another clone. Which then enters into you saving Rogue, because you hadn't even saved Rogue yet after she got captured from the whole falling shoe incident. Her being like internally wounded, you decide to make out with her and get this kind of funny, oh, she just keeps yanking you down moment. And what actually comes up is Rogue in a Deadpool mask, which then allows you to play as Rogue for a while. So you're just basically a chick with a Deadpool mask on with big tits. And yes, I'm emphasizing the fact that she's a chick with big tits because she has been fully like integrated with Deadpool's state of mind, because his state of mind is like a virus STD type shit into her body. So now she even is acting like Deadpool, pulling her into this insanity. So you're still playing as Deadpool, but in the body of Rogue, who is a straight up baddie. We all had a crush on her back in the old days of X-Men 97. I mean, that sweet Southern Belle, give me to it, give it to me now. Ooh, that got kind of gross and weird. Giggity schmoodle, what can I do? But when you actually play as Rogue, it does feel a little bit different because it feels like your attacks are doing a little more damage in the hack and slash sword play variety, because she doesn't utilize guns like Deadpool does. So it feels like it's just a quicker version of Deadpool's combat. And then once you're getting done with the combat, there's this great moment where Deadpool lobs a grenade over to where Rogue is fighting, only the dog then brings it back to him, and you get this moment where it's like no actual dogs were harmed in the making of this, which is such a great Deadpool joke. Again, perfectly timed Deadpool humor. He then goes and meets Death, which, if you don't know anything about the Deadpool universe, is Deadpool can't die, so therefore Death was in love with him. She wants him to be her husband. That is what she's always wanted. They are in love, but they keep being separated. It is a love you can never have. And so Deadpool will go out of his ways and fight characters that he has no chance in actually defeating because he wants to love Death and he wants to be with Death, but he is never allowed to be, which is just an interesting dynamic on a character who otherwise seems like he just has no point in life. He's just there to cause havoc, when in reality he just kind of wants to die and he's never allowed to, and he's constantly on his own. He's kind of a sad, lonely character if you look past the jokes and the bullshit. He just wants to be a part of something, and the one person who makes him feel like he truly matters, he's never allowed to be with. Which, I do like how the movies in Deadpool kind of changed this up a little bit, that he actually had a wife before the whole shit went down, and then she became Death. It's his goal to finally reunite with her. I do like that dynamic instead of just this entity of Death. And when you do get away from Death, you're then like hanging from the ceiling to land on top of a guy and use him as your legs. Again, perfect Deadpool writing, which then utilizes, again, the gameplay to tell the story, to utilize the gameplay as a vehicle to land these jokes, to land this character development. This game truly understands Deadpool, and it's just so fascinating to me that the creator of this game isn't like put on the same pedestal, because this guy was the art design director of Dark Watch. He then directed some of the Transformers games. This guy has done so much with High Noon. Honestly, at this point, I think Sean Miller should be held up there with some of the like legendary video game creators, because like even the incorporation of this weird little side scroller section, you think, oh well, a lot of games will take from 3 to three-dimensional and then put in a weird side-scroller section. But a lot of times it's just bare minimum, bare bones bullshit where you do side-scrolling shit for a few seconds. But this game, you can see the stuff that I missed here because of the truly in-depth design they made into this game's side-scrolling section. Now I'm a little quick off the trigger. I'm an old one-pump chump when it comes to everything in life. I tend to get excited and just splooge everywhere right away, so that's why I didn't quite get into all the secrets and the cool little tidbits throughout this side-scroller section. But the fact that it did feel like I was playing a Sonic game or a Mario or, I don't know, there's a billion others from that whole era of side-scrollers, this game kind of feels like a really condensed version of those. I mean, it even ends with a pretty decent boss fight where you get a chest, and it feels so natural into this game that I just don't understand how Sean Miller isn't put up there with like a Neil Druckmann and a fucking Kojima. I mean, well, Kojima is way ahead of Neil Druckmann, and I'm not even the biggest Kojima fan, but Neil Druckmann fucking sucks. The dude made like 3 games where he was the head director, and one of them is like, or 2 of them are like solid, one of them's trash. I don't care what you say about Last of Us 2. That shit is AIDS on toast shoved up your ass. But when you get to this game, it just, everything works. Even, like, the cool, diving into a little bit of the psyche of Deadpool is incredibly interesting. And I like the way they touched on it in this game. There's one section where you are shooting weird, it's like you're on a carnival ride shooting the attractions on the way through. And you're killing sentinels, you're killing weird monsters, and freakily drawn nurses with big tits. It feels super, super goofy. Almost out of place, but not quite out of place. And as the level progresses, it gets a little more horrific, it gets a little bit more twisted, and you're truly going into this descent of madness, which then builds to this moment where you are not only just shooting at random stuff that is trying to be horrific, but you're shooting at yourself as your head shows up as the boss fight, and you're breaking your own skull to deal with the monsters inside, which is incredible use of symbolism, which otherwise would have just been a normal on-rails segment. And even Deadpool comments on how this is like good symbolism. It's funny how any other game, if it were to call to light what I'm able to pull from the actual thing, it would be annoying. But in Deadpool, it's the emphasis on it is almost like he's calling back to himself, and because he's able to break the fourth wall, he's able to like add some brevity to what would be kind of mundane. And I really appreciate that. I don't know, there's just something kind of where you get lost in this section of the game, and you get lost in a lot of these sections of the game because this game understands its source material so well. It understands how to make the gameplay feel fresh, feel vibrant, make the character feel a little different than everything else you've read without completely changing the character. It's taking a character that is beloved and truly appreciated and then heightening that and adding to it and really creating something special here. And I see a lot of directors out there who will go into a game and say, well, yeah, I just wanted to do this because fuck what anybody else thinks, this is what I'm doing. And this guys were like, no, we are doing the best by this character we can possibly do. We are going to give this the best interpretation ever. And when you pull out of the scene and you see the monstrosity of death that you left in your wake, and it's almost like Deadpool had created this game in his mind, which goes to the fragility of the character's mindset at all times. I love what it was able to do here. And I love that this section is like capped off with almost a noir style, you'll never be able to be happy. And there's nothing better to emphasize that sad, like, depressing state than using this noir style cutscene, even though it is kind of like jokey in nature and it has that Deadpool tongue-in-cheek bullshit. It still feels at the end of the day like this was a meaningful moment in the game, which is so hard to do when it's a character who is honestly a fucking clown 20% of the time. I've played so many games where it has a humoristic tone to it, and I felt like the game was just there as a vehicle to move jokes, and I feel like this game was here to tell a story that is in a comedic sense. It is there, everything works so cohesively in this game, from the gameplay to the changing in environments to the changing in flow of everything. It feels so natural and guided so well that even the shortcomings in this game don't feel like that big of shortcomings. I mean, one of the things that I could have a gripe about with this game is I wish there was a little bit more weapon variety. As much as I do love the 4 weapon types, you got your shotgun, your pistol, pistols, your laser guns, and your machine guns, and then every once in a while you were able to pick up weapons from enemies. And I wish that they like had a little bit more variety and different things you could pick up, maybe some more rocket launchers or something. As much as I wish that was there, I still feel what I had here was so perfectly balanced and well made that gripe really just kind of lives as something that, oh, if they were to remake this game, it would be cool if they added more to it, or if they made a sequel to this, it would be cool to see what they could add and what could be brought into it. Too bad we will never get a sequel, because Marvel is now not a part of Activision, and High Noon is shoved into the COD mines forever, and we'll never get a Dark Watch 2, probably. We'll never get a Deadpool 2, but the idea that I could see that this game should have been expanded and really had the legs to grow into its own series alongside the actual Deadpool movies, but with a little bit of overlap, maybe a nod here and a nod there between the two of them, kind of like how Into the Spider-Verse gives a nod to the Spider-Man games. I would have loved to see that, and the fact that this game kind of just lives in its own little box is a little sad for me, because I think it had so much potential to be a truly amazing series. And yeah, it would have been tougher to make this game in today's day and age, with every game that has like semi-attractive women getting called sexist and all sorts of other bullshit that I don't really care about, because I don't want to dive into the politics and the political nature, because I think both sides are equally fucking retarded and you all need to shut up. I mean, a game can have bad writing without being woke, and then a game with like this hyper-politicized can be hyper-politicized and you can call it out. Both things can exist without being stupid and hating everything just to hate everything. Because I feel like there's a part of me that really misses this era of video games, because it didn't give a shit. It just wanted to make a fun game and wanted you to be able to tear people up. I mean, this whole section here was just a typical door breach slow motion, but it was so cool because of the cartoony blood everywhere and the over-the-top nature that this game in this era had, that calls back to what fun could be had in this time period. And I'm so sick of games just like scaping out on this type of stuff. They're getting rid of fun to try to implement all this bullshit to try to make it this next big hit. It has to be the biggest game of all time, when it felt like at this time period they were still trying to just make solid games. They didn't give a shit if it, like, this game doesn't go for realistic graphics at all. Absolutely not at all. And now when you look at the Spider-Man games, they don't even feel like Spider-Man, because they're trying to be something else. They're trying to look like something else. They don't feel like I'm stepping into the pages of a comic book and really living this experience that is just beautiful. That is why the Into the Spider-Verse movies work so well as an animated film, is because they take a different animation direction that makes you almost feel like you're stepping right into a comic book, and it's so fucking wonderful. And this game does the same thing. It has an art style that will last because it's so different, and it has humor that's so different. Yeah, some of it's a little aged, but who gives a shit? Sometimes it's funny to make jokes about people's tits and how juicy and how I want to suck them and just get on the nipple and be like, giggity schmoodle, and then slap some clit. That's all that sometimes you just need to have a little fun in life. And like, it's just so crazy that they went through the time and the patience to put in little Easter eggs and little tidbits, not Easter eggs, but little tidbits throughout the story to then lead up to bigger moments to where, oh, Deadpool leaves screen for a while. What is he doing? You're stuck with Cable for a little bit while he just does stuff. And then all of a sudden, later in the game, you find out all of these little things that you went through and did actually had giant monumental changes on how the story did. The first example of this being the little bouncy castle, then to have a bigger example of how Deadpool laid out all these little breadcrumbs throughout the story to then have this colossal ending that he thought his game deserved. I loved this shit. I loved this game. The boss fight was an incredibly fun romp too, because you fight two different Mr. Sinisters, and they, like, you start with fighting one, and then you fight two, and then you fight three. Mr. Sinister plays very similar to some of the other big enemies, but just enough different, with just enough, like, distance attacks to where you really got to keep on your toes, and then when they amp it up by adding a couple more in the same like situation, it feels like a breath of fresh air, because this game had some pretty decent boss fights, but I wish that they would have been able to really get a sequel to add some like great boss fights, because this Mr. Sinister one I thought was fantastic. It was a perfect way to cap off this game and to truly make you feel like you were kicking ass like Deadpool's able to kick ass. And the emphasis on just the fun in the mechanics of this game, the fact that yes, you can play it as a God of War like game, you can play it as a Max Payne style third person shooter, you have all these different attacks and movements, and you can teleport around, you can chain combos together like if you're playing Devil May Cry and also God of War, but you also can just sit back and shoot. You can like, there's so many possibilities in your combat, and there's so much just fun chaos to be had throughout this entire campaign, so much experimentation. The game's not that difficult on normal, so like you can learn the game really well, and like I said, the game's replayability factor is here because there is little weird fun to be had. It's something you can take a weekend, you've had a bad week, you can kick back and explore and live in the realm of Deadpool, and how the game just caps itself out by him, a plan he laid out through the entire campaign with a fucking giant leg bouncing on him after he nut checks him. That's fucking Deadpool. And this game understood the character, it understood it, it knew what job it had to get done, and it got it done, god damn it. Ends with Deadpool with sexy women on his legs, and it is one of the greatest gameplay experiences I have ever played.
Holy shit. That was awesome!
Deadpool! Hey! You did it, buddy. Look, I know we've had our differences, but look, I'll admit it. The game rocks. You rock, pal.
Pal?
And I hate to admit this, but we're actually not that much over budget. I didn't want to tell you that before, but now that the game's over, you know.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
Get your checkbook ready.
No, you're going over budget, damn it! You gotta stop!
Hey, hot tits, the pipe I was offering gives way more pleasure. Oh, come on!